Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Van Exen, and I am the Executive Director of GreenPAC. I'm joining you today from Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. We acknowledge this land and also the critical need to repair the injustices faced by Indigenous people and to uphold their rights. I'd like to welcome and thank our presenting sponsors for making today's event possible: Bruce Power, Coca-Cola Canada, Power Corporation of Canada, and EDF Renewables. I've really been looking forward to today's event. It's a chance for us to talk about environmental leadership in politics with some folks who know more than a thing or two about that topic. But it's also a chance for us to celebrate something that we think is a big deal: our 5th birthday. The success rate for nonprofit organizations is, it's not great at the best of times, and these are not the best of times. Yet, GreenPAC has managed to grow significantly over the years, responding to Canadians' hunger for strong environmental leadership across all parts of the political spectrum. In 2015, GreenPAC, it was an idea, a belief that to achieve the rapid progress needed for the health of our planet, we must elevate environmental champions of all political stripes. And since then, in 5 elections, we've endorsed environmental champions across the major parties so that Canadians could help get them elected. We introduced our parliamentary internship for the environment. Connected and supported Canadians, these across the country, through our 100 Debates on the Environment in 2019, and now through Everyday Advocates, a new initiative. We have a short video to share with you in celebration.
GreenPAC analyzes climate leadership through a nonpartisan lens, which is incredibly important because partisanship is one of the greatest hurdles to real, fast, meaningful action on climate.
I support GreenPAC's efforts to develop environmental leadership in every party, so that when we win environmental victories, they'll be protected by champions in every party in this country.
Over the last 5 years, you've contributed greatly to the debate on the environment in Canada.
GreenPAC plays an important role highlighting environmental issues and needed public policy that should be supported by all political parties.
We will elect different parties as we go forward. And if we've nurtured and supported environmental leaders in those parties, we have a much better chance of continuing with progress on the environment.
S'identifie et appuie des leaders en environnement qui travaillent à faire une différence pour nos enfants et nos petits-enfants.
GreenPAC helped me get elected. Now, each and every day, I get to advocate for environmental justice in the Ontario legislature.
GreenPAC has supported me and matters to me because of the educational opportunities that you are providing to Canadians, particularly young Canadians.
Being identified as an environmental leader by a nonpartisan organization allowed me to communicate to my constituents that environment policy is a priority for me in Ottawa.
GreenPAC's support enabled my campaign to mobilize volunteers and financial support in getting behind electing Ontario's first Green MPP.
We need more Green leaders getting elected so that they can champion laws that benefit the environment, equity, and people all across Canada.
It's important that parliamentarians from across the nation and from all parties are able to convey the impact of climate change on their own communities and to their colleagues in Parliament.
Canadians expect their representatives to preserve our environment and secure our future.
We need to elect parliamentarians that are committed to reducing emissions and doing their part to tackle climate change. Time's running out.
We don't have time for political infighting. We need to act now, and we've done amazing things in our first 5 years.
I am proud to congratulate GreenPAC on their 5th anniversary. Bon anniversaire, GreenPAC.
Thank you, GreenPAC.
I wish GreenPAC a very happy anniversary.
Congratulations on a job well done over the last 5 years, and my best wishes for the next 5.
We're at a critical moment in time. Science says we have a decade to make the transformative changes needed to decarbonize, to lock global warming at 1.5 degrees and avoid the worst impacts of the climate crisis. To do it, we need every scientist, every community leader, every business, every tech entrepreneur, and every activist. But none of these groups on their own can solve this problem, not without environmental leadership in politics. Leaders ready to listen openly, to work collaboratively, to make space for Indigenous leadership, and to bring forward bold change. And so I want to end with thanks to all of you. The fact that we are able to celebrate our 5th birthday today is because of you who share our belief that the well-being of our planet depends on inspired leadership. We'll be recording today's event. We already are. If you have any questions for our guests, please use the Q&A to submit them. The chat has been disabled. And you can use the thumbs up feature there to signal any questions you would like to see prioritized. And now I'd like to welcome Dave Thornton from EDF Renewables to introduce Minister and GreenPAC endorsee, Catherine McKenna. Over to you, Dave.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Good. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dave Thornton from EDF Renewables Canada. It's my distinct pleasure to represent our great team at EDF Renewables and to help GreenPAC kick off the agenda for Breakfast on the Web. EDF Renewables has been a proud sponsor of this event for almost all of those 5 years. This event as always was a highlight for me and one I look forward to. A chance to visit Ottawa in spring, catch up with some old colleagues and make some new ones. So while I was reminiscing about past events, I came to realize with all this working from home, my breakfast buffet skills are going to be super rusty. You know, that auto, where's the coffee instinct? You know, do I hit the pastry or do I go healthy or do I do a second trip? But for those veterans out there, you know the pressure I'm talking about. So before I introduce our keynote and discuss decisions of greater import, I want to talk a little bit about EDF Renewables. EDF stands for Électricité de France, and EDF Renewables has been demonstrating environmental leadership for the last 30 years in over 20 countries. Since 2008, EDF Renewables Canada has grown to over 130 employees across Canada. Together, our team has built over 1.8 gigawatts of wind, solar, and storage at the transmission and distribution level. That's enough renewable energy to power 425,000 homes. And we are most proud that over half of our portfolio is in partnership with Indigenous communities and host municipalities. It is in this collaborative approach to project development how we in any way, big or small, attempt to demonstrate environmental leadership in our work. Whether it's commissioning Canada's first wind turbine de-icing technology at our 150 megawatt Lac Alfred wind site in Quebec, or pioneering agrovoltaics at our 24 megawatt Armpar solar site before the term was even invented. And yes, that means we do host a successful beekeeping operation. And it does also mean negotiating a supplier contract with a flock of sheep to graze and maintain our solar sites. I may even put it in a good word to try and have that honey for next year's event. In short, whatever the challenge, we always find ways to get creative, collaborate, and get the job done for our customers and our host community. Today, our shared future on this earth is tied to how well we succeed in getting the job done and achieve net zero. And we believe that success will be directly tied to how our environmental leadership can be focused to identify practical pathways to lower emissions across our economy as swiftly and efficiently as possible. And that's why EDF Renewables is very eager to support organizations like GreenPAC that do the hard work to convene industry, thought leaders, politicians of today and tomorrow, and most importantly, youth to debate and activate practical climate solutions. I must admit, with the long-awaited but now fully realized cost declines of wind, solar, and energy storage technology, the reemergence of the various colors of the hydrogen economy, especially green, news of several new national emission reduction targets announced just last week at the Earth Day Climate Summit, and a compelling agenda at COP26 in Glasgow coming up, I have never felt more optimistic. But today, the work of getting the job done truly begins. One big reason I'm able to feel optimistic is due to the hard work and leadership of our keynote speaker, Minister Catherine McKenna. It is my great pleasure today to introduce Minister Catherine McKenna, who has represented Ottawa Centre since 2015. As the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, Ms. McKenna is responsible for overseeing the government's Investing in Canada plan with an aim to create economic growth, support a low-carbon green economy, and build inclusive communities. Her mandate includes leveraging private sector capital to build infrastructure in the public interest, whether by working with the Canada Infrastructure Bank or addressing Canada's long-term infrastructure needs. Amongst other things, during her years as Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Ms. McKenna helped to negotiate the Paris Climate Agreement, negotiated Canada's first climate plan with a national price on carbon pollution, and announced a ban on single-use plastics by 2021. One quick note, after the minister speaks, we'll be joined by GreenPAC intern Joshua Swift, one of GreenPAC's parliamentary interns for the environment, who has been supporting Minister McKenna on the Hill since September. So I'll turn off my camera and invite the minister to the virtual podium. Forgive me there. Hello, Minister.
Hi there. Thanks, Dave. And thanks for all your work. It's a great reminder. We have so many awesome Canadian companies doing great things, and there's a huge economic opportunity, the trillions of dollars, and we really need to be leading the way. And we are punching above our weight in many cases. So I want to start by recognizing I'm on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. And sadly, I'm not in my office because above me in my office is a Algonquin canoe, a birch bark canoe, 100 years old. And it reminds me that infrastructure comes in many forms. That was a canoe that was used by First Nations peoples in the Ottawa River for for millennia. They've been there, and always a reminder that there are people that have long been here before us, Indigenous peoples. Look, I'm thrilled to be here. I love GreenPAC. I love GreenPAC. Sarah, because I have a great intern. So Josh, who you're going to hear from a bit later, is pretty awesome. And I'm like, I want to talk to young people. I have like a script here, but I'm just going to go totally off script because I really think it's about inspiring people. We need to, it's hard. Like this has been such a terrible time through the pandemic. But gosh, we need hope and we need ambition and we need folks like Josh. So shout out to Josh. Josh actually, before he came to my office, he was doing voter registration and climate engagement in Philadelphia. Very important. So you may have seen there was an election there. That was also very important, especially the outcome. He's done a really great job in my office, and a shout out, you should go read a piece he did in Policy Magazine, but the impact of the pandemic on marginalized peoples by closing public restaurants like McDonald's. Where do they go use washrooms? Where do they have access to go wash their hands, get water? So anyway, a great young person. I know all the impact, the GreenPAC interns are awesome. So thanks for that, Sarah, for all your hard work. And of course, Aaron Freeman, I've known him for a very long time. And it was a great idea to start this and it's really gone big. So it's great. And I love seeing my colleagues because I just think it is so important to get beyond partisanship on climate. Look, we will have different policy ideas. And I think that is also, we got to recognize that. Not everyone was so keen on a price on pollution in the last election, but we do need to come together, and that is really important. And I'm glad that you really promote leaders from all parties. So great to see Joyce Murray, my good friend, but also Taylor and Jenica and Eric Duncan, Mike Chong. I know he probably loved to be here, but so many others, my secretary, Andy Fillmore. So look, I'm going to start by a story. Maybe some of you have heard this story before. I actually didn't realize I'm wearing a ulu. So if any of you have spent time in the Arctic with Inuit, that's very important. It's how they do this amazing job of filleting fish, Arctic char often. But the story starts, I'm on a ship. I'm on Students on Ice. So some of you might know Jeff Green and Students on Ice, or maybe you've done it. This is a trip to the they go to the Arctic and then they go to Antarctica, but I was in the Arctic with them, half There's young people on the ship, half are Indigenous, which I think is really amazing. Many Inuit young people. And we have scientists, there are scientists and others on the ship. And we're at the end of, I'd been there, I was only there for a few days, but I'd had a chance to talk to lots of great young people. And one of the young people, Carter, from Cambridge Bay, came up to me at the very end. And he said, I want to talk to you about what I think the impacts of climate change are in my community. And I said, sure, but why don't I get one of our climate scientists? So we have amazing public servants in Environment and Climate Change Canada. We sat down and he said, when I go hunting, it's very hard to find the caribou, and that's our country food. We rely on that. It's also passing on the tradition of hunting. And he said that they're just are so hard to find now. And then he said, when we're hunting, often my feet, I'll get my boots stuck in quicksand. It's thawing permafrost. And then he said the thing that was the saddest. He said, a couple of my friends, their dads went hunting on the ice and they never came back. They fell through the ice. So for millennia, Inuit have been hunting on the ice and they've been able to tell the thickness. And that's changed. And this is really what it's about. This is why partisanship and fighting about, things that really are going to move the dial and get us to net zero and are critically important, such a waste of time, because we all share this one planet. It does, the planet doesn't care whether you're a liberal or green or NDP or conservative. Don't care. But they care that we take action to protect it. And we got a lot of work to do. So a couple lessons, because I think, I don't know, for what it's worth, you can take it or leave it. One, I remember listening to David Plouffe. So you can find, he's got a podcast, and he was just talking about politics and governing. And you're pretty lucky when you're in power, right? You can do things, but there's huge responsibility with that. And he said that often, people are worried about being criticized for things that you do. But he said, you're going to be criticized anyway. So do the big, bold things that will move the dial, like save the planet. And I've always thought that was such a great way of saying it, because hard things are hard and you got to do them. And, not everyone's going to like what you do. You try, price on pollution, you try to make the case, the economic case, the case for the planet, the case that it just saves people money or creates the right incentives. But not everyone's going to like what you do, but you still have to do it, right? And that is something I learned, because you can do things by half. You can feel like, you can make a little bit of a difference, but in climate, we don't really have the chance to do that. Two, politics and policy and people, that you have to think about all three things. And sometimes there is a tendency, to think, okay, I'm just going to get the right policy, right? And then, it's going to have consequences, but, that's just the way it is. So take phasing out coal. So we came in committed to phasing out coal. Well, there's the policy. So we brought in, the policy, the regulatory framework to do that. Great. The politics, you can sell it, progressives in particular, I think generally people understand that coal is extremely polluting and it's about cleaner air, cleaner water, obviously climate change. But you have to think about people too. And I think it's easy to sometimes just be focused on your policy and politics, but forget that there's real people. And one thing that we did that was really amazing, and it's worth actually talking to folks that were part of this task force. It was a Just Transition task force. They went to communities where we're literally phasing out jobs, phasing out coal. That's what you're doing, right? It was 2030. And we listened to people in those communities. The 600 people would jam into the hall, the local hall, and some were really mad and some were really scared and some of them thought it wasn't fair. But you know what they appreciated? The people actually came. The people actually came to listen to them. And this was led by Hassan Youssef, who is really amazing. And we thought about, okay, what policy, what do people need? They still need a community. The community was all based around coal. So there's investments in infrastructure. There's retraining, there's supports that are needed, but don't forget, like, don't be a one-trick pony in this. Like, if we're gonna bring people along, you have to bring everyone. Everyone has to be a winner in this, and that's hard. Transitions are by definition hard. The last thing is really, maybe I'll just call it the unusual suspects category. Like, who can you bring together that is like, you might not think about? I think that one, I don't know when I started this, like young people were there and they really cared, but it took one girl, like Greta. She sat in front of her parliament on her own, like in the rain. And she created a humongous movement. And who could even have imagined it? So I don't think young people are unusual suspects. I think they're just like, we're flipping doing this and we're going to push you to do that. And we're going to call you out and you're going to have to be more ambitious. And we're part of the solution. So I think that is amazing. Indigenous peoples, I've been very fortunate to work with so many amazing Indigenous leaders, but also grandmothers, also Indigenous youth, elders. I've been on the land with them and just learned so much. And those partnerships are extremely powerful. And really that connection that Indigenous peoples have the land, but also understanding that they want to be part of the solutions. And they really have been, like, leading in so many ways, including on nature. We have been able to do huge, ambitious things on nature. But then there's, like, the average folks, like, folks who are just trying to get through their day, and we need them to be part of it. And you have to talk like a normal person. So this is my last piece of advice. I cared about the environment, but I didn't come to this as like a pure environmentalist. I was a human rights lawyer. And I didn't understand what anyone was talking about. Like, literally, I didn't know what a COP was. I just say, okay, what does COP mean? And it was like Conference of the Parties. It was okay, great, amazing. Don't use acronyms. I mean, we probably still use COP. But when you start looking about adaptation and mitigation and maybe even net zero by 2050, people don't know what we're talking about. So talking about clean air, clean water, talking about nature, talking about your kids, talking about economic opportunity and jobs and innovation, like those are things that we always need to remember, because it's really important that we bring people together. So with that, I guess we're doing some questions. So I don't know if that was what I was supposed to talk about, but I just really think it's really important to to learn some lessons, but also to try to inspire you guys, because I look at you, these interns, you guys are amazing, and you're going to do amazing things. Maybe, I don't know, you'll be Minister of Environment and Climate Change one day. I hope with whatever party, I hope you are. But just keep on pushing. And I see amazing Joshua, who sadly, Josh had to even make sure that I voted last night at like 1:40 a.m. Don't ask why we're voting at 1:40 a.m. That's kind of bananas. But Josh, do we have some questions?
Yes, we do. Thank you so much, Minister McKenna. It's always so inspiring to hear from leaders like yourself who are so dedicated to protecting our planet. We have received a large amount of questions in the chat here. So
okay, I'm going to pull some up. I've got QA and chat. So okay, great. Want to choose some?
Sure. So here's one. What advice can you offer young leaders in terms of persevering through personal attacks and preventing burnout?
Oh, okay. Let's get right to it. Well, I mean, there's many ways. Like, actually, my friend's dad was Brian Glennie. I don't know if any of you knows the hockey player. So he played for the Leafs, and he said, "No one said it would be easy, kid." That's what my friend always says that, and I was like, "That's kind of a good motto." Like, whatever. This is a hard job. I think that sadly, you learn to deal with them a bit, and that kind of sucks. And I'm not a robot, and so some of the personal attacks were hard. I did do one thing once, or maybe twice, or probably more than that. For a long time, like, people called me Climate Barbie. I didn't really like that, because I didn't even play with Barbies. I don't care if you did, but I didn't. And I was like, why do they care about my hair? I'm just trying to do my job. Stop trying to try to belittle me. And one day I just called it out. It was Rebel Media, and I just called out the journalist. I was like, I'm happy to answer your question. Stop using that name. And It was good because it went viral. I had no idea it would go viral. I was just kind of pissed off they were asking a question, and it was just a trick. And it was interesting because the reaction of Canadians was really good. And I realized that Canadians have your back, and I think social media has given people a platform that they wouldn't necessarily have, for good and for bad. I engage with loads of great people, but I think we do have to change things, and that's a commitment I've made. Not so much for me. I mean, I guess I'm now feel like I'm pretty tough, and sometimes I go off social media for a while because I'm done. But I think that I owe it to folks who women. There's a weird thing about misogyny and climate. You can go read about it, but also Indigenous folks. Racialized people on Twitter, on social media, women. So I'm going to keep on fighting it. But also I think you got to keep your eye on the ball. Like, the ball is like changing things. Like, it's not the fight that someone wants to engage you on. It is like changing the course that we are on, and it's doing real things. So you have to tune out the noise a bit, be a little bit sad. I'm not the most sad person, and then just keep on going.
Awesome. I think I just have a time.
I'll be
for
shorter
one more
now. I
quick
know we got other questions, so I'll be like, I'll do like speed dating questions.
We've got lots of people here interested in environmental policy, it seems. So
Sure.
One common question: can there be federal incentives to help homeowners, businesses to go solar and adopt renewable energy?
Yeah, I mean, so we need to retrofit everything. The built environment is about 20% of our emissions, and we need every building that's built from now on to be net zero. That's just a reality. And so we have incentives, but I think we always need to assess whether they're going to nudge the behavior, right? Like, sometimes we bring in programs, and I think we just need to always test and make sure that they're doing that. And we have to stop lurching, because even in Ontario, they had some really great programs where folks were able to do renewables and put them on the, back onto the grid. And that's a great option. And, we yo-yo, so that's not good. We brought in through the budget a new retrofit program, the Canada Infrastructure Bank, which is a really great tool. Is working on retrofitting large buildings. And of course that can include renewables. Also district energy, I think, is a huge opportunity. We talked about hydrogen here. So we are bringing in those programs. And the good news is also it's the market. Market is important, and the price is going down precipitously. So we need to create the incentives so that we can overcome the upfront costs and make sure that we create the incentives for adoption. But I think there's more we can do. And I think we brought in a lot of different retrofit programs, including affordable housing in different, spaces. But I think that is a huge opportunity, because it's also about saving money. And who doesn't like saving money, by the way? Everyone likes saving money.
Amazing. Well, I think we'll have to wrap up our Q&A, but thank you again so much, Minister McKenna, for taking
So much more to say, but you know what? Just huge thanks to GreenPAC, and really thank you for working across party lines, because there's really great people. And I really appreciate all the folks that the members of parliament, who, whatever party they're with, who stand up for the planet and hard policies. Anyway, and thanks, Josh, you're great. I don't know, hopefully I don't have a vote at 1 a.m. so you can sleep. Anyway, thanks everyone. Have a great conference.
Terrific. Well, thank you, Josh, and thank you, Minister McKenna. We're pretty lucky to have you both with us today. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our other panelists. So I'd like to welcome Green Party MP Jenica Atwin, who represents the riding of Fredericton and was selected this year's 12th annual Rising Star for Maclean's Magazine's annual Parliamentarian of the Year Awards. Welcome. Also NDP MP Taylor Backrack, who represents the riding of Skeena, Bulkley Valley, and is the NDP critic for infrastructure and communities and transportation. Conservative Party MP Eric Duncan, who represents the riding of Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry, a long one. MP Duncan is a member of the official opposition's House leadership team and serves as their question period coordinator. I'd also like to welcome the Honourable Joyce Murray, who is the Minister of Digital Government and a Liberal MP representing Vancouver Quadra. And I'd also like to welcome today's panel moderator, Miko Nicholas. Miko is the Executive Director of the First Nations Land Management Resource Center and is Wolastoqiyik from the Nugutpuk First Nation in New Brunswick. Welcome, Miko. Miko has been supporting the development of the framework agreement on the First Nations Land Management Center for 25 years. Again, please send any questions for our panelists using the Q&A. Over to you, Miko.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone, especially to our distinguished panelists, and greetings from the Wolastoqiyik territory in New Brunswick. Thank you all for agreeing to share your perspectives this morning. And I'd just like to remind everybody that the responses are capped at about 90 seconds, so let's try to keep it to that. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Starting with Mr. Bachrach, MP Bachrach, keeping the temperature low on partisan politics while focusing on advancing the best policies for environmental progress and the integrity of our democracy. Can you tell us what you've learned about the best ways to do that?
Thank you for the question, Miko, and good morning, everybody. I know it was a late night for some of us, and looking at Jenica, who of course is how many hours ahead? 4 hours ahead of us on the West Coast. So if we're rubbing our eyes a bit, that's probably why. And I'm so grateful to be joining you, and thank you to GreenPAC. I'm joining from the unceded territory of the Wet'suwet'en people here in Smithers in Northwest BC. And the question you've asked, Miko, is a wonderful one. It's something I've reflected a lot on, and it's an ongoing work in progress, I think, trying to come to this work, which is really designed to be adversarial and partisan, and coming to it and trying to embody something other than that. And certainly the other panelists you have on the screen, I think, really embody the spirit of nonpartisanship to the extent that you can in this system that we work in. I worked as a mayor of a small town, the mayor of Smithers, for almost a decade. And one thing I love about municipal politics is that, especially in small communities, it really is nonpartisan. And I worked with a fabulous gentleman named Bill Goodacre. He was a longtime Smithereen. He'd been on council for 100 years. And he had this marvelous way of working with people across the spectrum. Smithers is can be a very polarized community. Someone once called it a difference of opinion surrounded by mountains. And Bill always said, you've got to be hard on ideas and soft on people. And that's something, I have a little picture of him. He passed sadly a couple of years ago. I have a little picture of him in my office in Ottawa. And when I see it, I think of that phrase and I try to remember it in my work.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. Next, we'll turn to Minister Murray. Mr. Murray, you serve as a Minister of Digital Government, and you are formerly the President of the Treasury Board. These are portfolios that don't immediately come to mind for most people when thinking about environmental policy. Can you share any reflections on how leaders can drive environmental progress when it's not primarily their mandate?
Sure, and it's great to join Jenica, Eric, and Taylor in this panel, and thank you to GreenPAC for what you do. Just want to let you know how much I appreciate your initiative and how much difference it's making in cross-partisanship. So I thought about my time in Parliament, which is 12 years, and there were three things that came to mind for me. How to move forward on environment if that's not your portfolio. So one is just be aware of and seize an opportunity that comes your way. And so an example for me of that is I was the parliamentary secretary to the Treasury Board, and the president said, why don't you work on greening government, which was a program Scott had started back in the early 2000s, and then it had kind of languished. So I decided I said, fine, I'll work on that. And I took it away and turned it into what's now Canada's Centre for Greening Government in the Treasury Board. And I mapped out a program based on BC's Zero Emission Government Initiative from 2008. Did a lot of consulting and, spent a bunch of time on it. And then in 2016, it went through cabinet, and lo and behold, we have that program that is working to have the government itself be a leader in reducing emissions from its operations. So that's seizing an opportunity. Another one is when people come to you with a problem or idea, like how can you use that and move it forward to actually make a difference if you resonate with it? And the example for me of that is a constituent in early fall of 2017 came forward and said, I've been collecting plastic off of the distant coastal beaches, and it's just horrible how much there is, and it's been paid for by the Japanese government, but unfortunately that's run out, and the federal government doesn't have any programs around plastic that I can find. So I spent a few months working on this and came up with a 2-page paper, which I flogged at caucus. And guess who? Our Minister of Environment at the time came to me afterwards and said, I want to see that paper. So could you share it with me? And to make a long story short, it turned into the government championing plastic waste reduction at the G7, and Minister McKenna championing it at the G7 environmental meeting. So it's moved forward on turning problems into solutions. So that's what I've done over the course of my time as a member of parliament. But that's also something people can do in all walks of life, is just have that intentionality to see through the lens of how can I turn this situation or opportunity into moving the dial on the thing that I care about.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting response. Next, MP Duncan, as someone who has been both a mayor and now a member of parliament, what would you say to young people looking at their future who don't see politics as a place for them to make a difference for the environment and climate?
I think hopefully maybe looking at this panel to see the opportunity in Minister Murray's example there is an opportunity in public life, whether that's in an elected role or in a staff role, that I always argue staff can have just as much influence as members can with their advocacy as well. In my background at the federal level and at the municipal level, it takes that effort. It takes the effort of candidates with issues that they're passionate on to get on the ballot, to get on the radar, and to move them forward. And I think there's a lot, when we look at the environmental portfolio, for an example, there's more that unites us as, common issues across. A big passion of mine coming from the municipal background, for an example, is waste reduction, landfills, and how in the technology and the opportunities that are there. There are so many issues across political parties between federal, provincial, and municipal that people can unite on, that are both opportunities to improve our environment, and also in terms of job creation and technology and being leaders on this to share around. So my message to young people is that, yeah, you've got to be present, you've got to be there, you've got to have your voice, and how you do that, regardless of your party and whatever it may be. And I think elected roles are very important, but never underestimate the role of being involved as a staff member, if it's on the Hill, in a provincial legislature, at a municipal, at the municipal level. There's lots of opportunities, and you've got to be at the table to affect change in whatever form that is. So it's not always easy, and I appreciated Minister McKenna's argument. I had a thick skin at municipal politics, and I've got a thicker skin now that I'm here in Ottawa. It's part of the territory, but I think you have to look at the glass half full. Sometimes it's tough to do that, and to persevere and affect change, be there, be present, and be heard.
Excellent. Very good answer. Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Next, MP Atwin. The people most affected by environmental degradation, climate change, and the pandemic are generally those least represented on Parliament Hill. What needs to change about politics so that more people from equity-seeking groups make it onto party slates and into our Parliament?
Thanks so much, Miko. Good morning, Lizzie Bowell. I'm also coming from the unceded Wolastoqiyik territory here in Willamugadug. And you may hear a little voice from time to time. I'm home with my sick 3-year-old. So there could be some cartoons in the background as well. But I really appreciate this question, and it's really important. It's a question, I think, that leads to this transformation that we're hoping to see in politics, in our communities, and even just kind of commenting on I see myself as kind of a different politician, and I don't know if there would have been space for me in the traditional parties. I really feel that the Green Party was my home because it opened up that door for me. And so there's lots of work to be done. And it starts with, looking at party culture shifts. We've got to address toxic masculinity, bigotry, there's prejudice, discrimination that exists. I truly believe it can be rooted out. We can take the necessary steps to make sure that, this barriers are taken down. I also see a need to support grassroots movements, and empower leadership from activism. That's something that I'm really passionate about. We don't have to be what we view as a traditional politician or come from a traditional background to see ourselves in these roles. My career, I always say, started on the picket lines, being involved in demonstrations and speaking up locally for my community, as far as issues around fracking. That was a really big one here for New Brunswick. So that's really where it started for me. And so I hope that I can help others, be inspired by that activism and see themselves there is in perhaps a non-traditional role. But it's, it's about fairness as well in the recruiting process, in vetting candidates, and supporting them through that nomination and being named. And then it's about, the support system that wraps around that person, maybe once they've gotten there, because I find sometimes we tend to check boxes and think, well, we've gotten this far, we have an equity seeking candidate, that's all the work that needs to be done. And absolutely, that's not true. We need to create safe spaces. We need to ensure there are mentors in place, all the supports that are necessary to make sure that that person feels secure in their role and able to pursue, their future in politics and have a loud voice that's being heard to make that change. So I think there's lots of things that we can do, but I do see it starting to shift, and I see that across the political spectrum. And I am so thankful for the friends that I've made in all parties in Parliament, and that was something I didn't really expect. I thought I'd be in my little quiet green corner, and I wouldn't be making a lot of friends and allies. But we align on more things than we disagree on, and I think that we need to focus on that. But opening up those safe spaces and ensuring the supports are there are integral to ensuring that equity-seeking candidates are on the ballot and represented in Parliament.
Excellent. Well, thank you. You're all very, I got to say, very inspiring, and really enjoying your responses so far. So I'd like to come back to MP Bacharach now. MP Bacharach, at the local level, more Canadians, particularly young Canadians, are getting involved in climate action and advocacy. How are you seeing that leadership from the outside shaping the way environmental priorities get set and policy gets made on the inside?
Thanks for the question, Miko. It's a great one, and the role of young people, I believe, has never been stronger than it has over the past year or two. And this real resurgence, especially around the climate issue, I believe owes almost solely to the work of young people through the school strike for climate and other movements around the world. That it's front and center in people's minds, and I think that's fabulous. You talked a little bit about outside pressure, and outside pressure plays such a central role in our political system. And one thing that's a little bit startling when you come to federal politics is realizing what a massive industry has been built around that outside pressure. And there are some voices that get heard in our political system much more frequently and much more loudly than other voices. And so I believe our obligation as parliamentarians is to listen to those other voices, and young people make up one of the most important constituencies, I believe, especially around the climate issue. And in many ways, their voices are silenced by our society and by our political system. So bringing young voices into the spotlight and treating them as credible is such an important role for us as MPs.
Great, thank you, MP Bacharach.
And I would add that I come to this as someone who, as a very young person, was so concerned about the environment and frustrated by the silencing effect of those in power, and the discrediting and the lack of acknowledgement of the legitimacy of the concerns that we brought forward as young people. It's funny to now have a 16-year-old daughter who carries that same energy of frustration and being surprised at the passage of time and how things change.
Okay, good. It seems we're getting a few questions in from other conference attendees. So generally for panelists, what needs to change about the politics to accelerate change for the environment? And maybe we will direct that to Minister Murray. To start
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
What needs to change about politics to accelerate change for the environment?
Okay. Well, that I think what is really critical is the public's commitment to this, because you can have politicians of all stripes that care about it, and if the public is not there, there is a limit to what we can do. So I always appreciate any of the environmental groups, all of them, all of the movements, because when they come to me as a politician and say, I want you to know how dire the situation is and you need to do more, I thank them and I say, and really who needs to hear that is also the public. So what can you do to convince the public? And I think we've seen a huge shift since I was first in elected politics in 2001 in British Columbia. I mean, the public really understands this much more deeply, and so that's I think the reason for that isn't what politicians do; it's because of activists in the community and organizations, and so that almost gives us permission. I think one example of that is Stéphane Dion, very committed to climate change and the environment, had a fabulous platform called the Green Shift, which was also a huge poverty reduction plan, by the way. And he led the Liberals into an election that lost dozens of seats. The public was simply not ready. So I think we're in a different time. And what's great about that is I think there's a lot more optimism and hope, and some of the fatigue and apathy and mental health challenges from being a strong activist and advocate for something that really didn't seem to be moving for many years. I think that I hope is behind us, because there is a huge amount of change here in Canada, across the border in the United States, and internationally. Now we have to find those solutions and put those aspirations into action as governments. And we certainly have a very committed group in the government currently in Canada, and are doing everything we can to mobilize Canadians to support the shift.
Okay, thank you, Minister Murray. Next, we've got another question here. Can any of the members talk about how lobbying, the fossil fuel industry plays in influencing environmental priorities? Would anybody like to tackle that one?
I can tackle that one. So this is such an important conversation to have, especially, we're talking about how parties work together, representation in Parliament. Lobbyists have quite a representation in Parliament. They have a lot of power. Steps have been taken to try to reduce some of that influence, but it still is very much there. And it's about, there's issues around greenwashing as well. You have to kind of have your guard up and know who you're speaking to and what they're bringing to the table when they come, and what agendas that they may have. This is something I wouldn't say I was particularly prepared for, entering this realm of federal politics. I had a little more kind of hope and optimism that, maybe it wasn't quite like that, but it very much is. So we need to confront this at all levels of government, be aware of, who's pulling the strings, and what direction they're trying to take this country and our communities in, be based on their own, profits and margins. We need to have our eyes wide open. And I think that would be my message for anyone who's getting involved in the environmental movement is be aware. There's lots of sharks in the water, and we have to be ready to combat that with truth, with myth busting. There's a lot of that. There's issues in our own backyard here in New Brunswick that I'm very much trying to confront with the honesty and the facts that our citizens need to make informed decisions around the decisions that will impact the future generations. So I look to my children. I think about, what am I doing to protect them? And part of that is knowing when to stand up to lobby groups and to speak out against them. So that is key to this conversation. So thank you for whoever asked that question. We need to talk more openly about this and then the power that they have in our Parliament. Thank you.
Could I add on to that, Miko, just really quick? One of the things I've been reflecting on is that the greatest resource we have as MPs is our time. And so thinking about how we allocate that time and who we give time to, and ensuring that, because if you took every meeting with every lobbyist that contacted your office, you would only talk to a lobbyist. And so seeking out other voices and ensuring that you're also hearing from, it's important to hear, for instance, the perspective of the fossil fuel industry. That is one of many perspectives. And I think that, we're all intelligent individuals. We can hold that in perspective and understand it for what it is, but we need to hear those other voices. And if we fill up our time at receptions with corporate lobbyists, we're not going to have time to hear the youth and the school kids and Indigenous people and people who are marginalized in our system. So I try to remind myself of that and seek out those other voices.
Absolutely, very good points. Maybe we'll hear from Eric a bit. There's got another question here. How has the pandemic changed your thinking or leadership for the environment?
Good question. Even just to build on Taylor and Jenica's point too, about we'd be 2 weeks from Tuesday meeting with lobbyists for all the requests we get. My predecessor had a really good policy that I thought, and I've been using about 99% of the time, is that when I get a request from any organization, albeit environmental, economic, health, I always ask to speak to a local person on it. So if an association comes and says, oh, we want to come and lobby you on something, okay, I want to hear from a local business person. I want to hear from the local farmer in the ag. Dairy farmers have a great relationship, for an example. I want to hear from the local dairy farmers, have them on the call. I want to get the local context. And that's really helped myself localize it and has been a big thing for me that way. On the question of the pandemic, I think, this is the Zoom life. That's more than anything in terms of the ease of meeting people now, albeit not the preferred way, but hopefully something that'll change in the short term. But I think the pandemic for me has shown, and this goes back to, I think, what actually a few were saying about the importance of human connections. I love the quote that Taylor had about, the people skills and that human connection. I miss that as a new class of 2019. Taylor, Jenica, and I are both in the same situation. Minister Murray has had the opportunities of, when there's votes in the House of Commons, in the lobbies, having that social time, that human interaction. We've underestimated that. So I think when it goes to the public policy aspect, people underestimate the need to be in the same room, to have those conversations, to get to know people and build that, that human connection with people. And I think that's been very important for me. I miss, frankly, there's that Ottawa aspect, but even in the riding as well, of trying to get the pulse of the riding. I don't miss many church suppers as a bachelor. I miss them very dearly, but they were a good chance to have people bend your ear. When I go out and you go back to Ottawa, I have, you go back and say after the weekend, I couldn't believe the number of people that talk to me about this issue X, or, we're in Ottawa and we're talking on this important legislation that we just think the country's captivated with, and you go back home and it's not, it's something completely different. So I've learned from the pandemic, particularly with environmental policy, even with that lens on it, of, there's the Ottawa world and then there's the riding reality world. The more we can localize things, the more we can give that local perspective, I think, on environmental issues. A huge one in my riding is agriculture. Sustainable agriculture is getting there. No-till farming. There's so many opportunities there that I feel we can localize and build support on. Communication is a key on that. Taking that message, simplifying it for people to understand, and giving them solutions for things, I think, is something that's for me has been a lesson learned so far in Ottawa.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Mr. Duncan. So it looks like we've run out of time. I think I'll hand it back to Sarah at this point for the next item on the agenda. Thank you all. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, Miko, and ministers and MPs Atwin, Bachrach, and Duncan. I know the House is sitting and the meetings are underway, so we're just really grateful for all of your time. Okay, and yes, our pleasure. Thanks, Minister. Great. Okay, well, for the final part of our event today, I think it's going to be a real treat. We're going to get some unique insights on moving the needle on the environment and politics from our interns and their MP partners. So I'm going to ask MP Bachrach and GreenPAC parliamentary intern Zhangling Liu, who's been working in his office, I should say, since September, to get us started. Perfect.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. And hi, Zhonglin. Good morning.
Good morning, Taylor.
So I think we're going to have a little fireside chat here about your experience as a GreenPAC intern and ask each other some questions. I'm hoping Sarah will jump in when we have maybe 30 seconds left and let us know to wrap it up. But I wanted to start by asking you about your experience. I know this is your first time working close to the political sphere, in the political sphere, on the virtual hill, so to speak. And I imagine you came to the role with some preconceptions. I'm wondering what you found the most surprising about federal politics and politics in general, and also maybe this part is a little bit more tricky. What opportunities you feel MPs miss in moving the needle on the environmental issues that we're so concerned about?
Thank you, Taylor. This is a big question. And let me just say hello to everybody. I'm joining from North York, the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, the Haudenosaunee, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. So I think I'm going to come back to this idea of partisanship that's been raised so many times. I think I've definitely found my experience on the Hill to both be more and less partisan than I expected. So I've been surprised, I think, by the extent to which political messaging informs the presentation of even very policy-oriented environmental proposals. But at the same time, I've been really impressed by the extent to which, for example, the committee witness selection process in terms of looking at which experts we want to hear from has been really evidence-based and about hearing from the most sort of learned voices. And I think this also informs my sense of the institutional gap which exists. And I'm very well aware that this is maybe a function of the hybrid parliament or just the aspects of your work that I've supported, which is that there really don't seem to be a lot of formal spaces for substantive collaboration on issues across party lines. And I suspect this is maybe an impression that's shared by quite a chunk of the engaged general public. But I'm very curious for your experience on this as well, I think.
Yeah, I would say a lot of that in terms of these informal spaces where we can collaborate across party lines and build agreement. You know, a lot of that is a function of the pandemic and the fact that those spaces don't actually exist. And we're separated as MPs, we're separated by, in some cases, thousands and thousands of kilometers. Of course, being a new MP, I haven't really known anything different. So I'm very much looking forward to getting back to Ottawa and experiencing that aspect of the work and looking for those opportunities to collaborate and to build bridges across party lines. My next question, Zhonglin, one way for members of parliament to strengthen their teams around environmental priorities is by taking on GreenPAC interns. And I've got to say, it's been such an absolute pleasure to have you as part of our team. I'm wondering what your advice would be for members of parliament who might be considering the GreenPAC intern program and considering taking on an intern. What would your advice be to them?
Well, first of all, thank you so much. It's also been an honor and a pleasure being part of your team. I think the first thing I will say is definitely do consider taking on an intern. I think our cohort has brought a wide variety of sectoral and technical expertise to our respective teams, and I don't think we're atypical compared to other cohorts. And I think something that I've definitely felt and been very grateful for during my experience is that you've definitely taken a long-term approach to sort of having me contribute to the issues that we work on in terms of assigning me the tasks and projects that would really help me learn and develop my skills. And this is something that I would encourage any MP who takes on an intern to take, because after all, I think we're a group that's quite motivated and well-equipped to contribute to these issues throughout our careers. So even beyond our work with the office, I think with the right support and training, we can continue to contribute to these issues in ways that I'm sure our respective offices would be happy to see.
So, Zhonglin, I'm seeing a little message from Sarah. I know 5 minutes goes by in the blink of an eye. It's always surprising how quickly it does. So I think we're going to have to wrap up. But I wanted to end by saying I'm just so thrilled that You're off to Cambridge in the fall to study environmental policy. I want to wish you all the best. We still have you for a few more months. And like I said, it's been a real pleasure. So thanks for your commitment to change on the environment, and best of luck with these next months and wherever your path takes you.
Thank you. I certainly intend to make the most of them with you.
Fabulous. Back to you, Sarah.
Great. Thank you to you both. And I'd now like to welcome MP Atwin to come back and join us, and also welcome Clément Vedra, who is her parliamentary intern for the environment.
I can't seem to open up my video. If someone can turn it back on for me. From the host?
Yeah, okay.
Natalie,
there we go. We'll get that started. There we go.
Okay, we're back. Well, thanks so much. And it's so wonderful to be joined by Clément, who has just been an integral part of our team, since you started, Clément. And I mean, we call it a family for sure, and you're definitely part of the family. So long past your internship, you'll be getting calls from me for advice and for help, and your perspective is just so important. My little one's distracting me, as you know very well in our meeting. So it's been, I mean, I'd love to hear from you too about what your experience has been, and some of the ways that we really try to focus on local issues, grassroots issues from the riding. We've got a couple kind of big issues right now that we're really trying to tackle head on. A private members bill that's really specific to New Brunswick. So I don't know where you want to start, but I'd just love to hear from you on that as well.
Yeah, actually, it's thank you for that, and thank you for welcoming me on the team and helping me learn the rope and move forward and get involved more with the team as time went by. And family is a good word. I truly appreciate the way you've taken the time, and the rest of the team as well, and also the respect that you give to everyone on the team for space. And there's a lot of talk about managing your time, and you're trying not to have burnouts, but mentioned at the beginning of the event. And those are things that the team is really focused on as well. I think it's important to be able to keep doing a good job. And that's something I really appreciate within your team as well, that there is that balance and that respect of each other. But I wanted to go back a bit on some of the things that were touched on earlier in the event as well, more regarding some of the importance of keeping our environment close to us, also in a good shape, not only about climate change, but more local environmental issues. And you mentioned the PMB, and I wanted to see if you could talk a bit more about how you moved the needle on that issue locally and raise awareness, how it came from a grassroots issue, and how you moved that forward a bit more, if you wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Awesome. So yeah, thanks so much. And so the PMB is, for me, it's like even my speech in the House when we presented it was like, this is a promise that I made to our constituents. And that's because it's a huge issue in New Brunswick around forestry in particular. And we've got herbicide spraying of glyphosate. And so my PMB, I know, is very ambitious. It's to ban outright in all its forms. So it's an update to the Pest Control Products Act. And really it's about protecting biodiversity. We're using this spray to specifically weed out hardwood species because our softwood is good for the industry in our area. It's impacting animal habitat. It's impacting riparian zones, your wetlands as well. It could be seeping into the water table. There's just so many concerns that we've heard for years now in New Brunswick. Hunters have raised the alarm, forestry experts, citizens. So it was something for me that really represents, bringing that voice to Parliament, which is what I promised to do and what our team has committed to. So the PMB was kind of a nice, culmination of that work. And for me, it's going to be tough to get it through. I understand the challenges that, that exist in Parliament, but it's about bringing that conversation to the federal level. And even there's been a lot of feedback from it, and people haven't even considered in a lot of ways the forestry applications, because that's the specific context for New Brunswick and the Atlantic, where other concerns around agriculture are more throughout the rest of Canada. So it's getting that momentum going to start talking about some of the ways that pesticides and herbicides have very negative impacts on us as human beings, as well as the planet. So I'm really proud of that. And thank you so much for being a part of that as well. And I think, I would shift as well into a conversation around New Brunswick in particular as being the only bilingual province. So I appreciate so much, Clément, the perspective that you've brought for les droits de francophonie, Quebec perspective as well, it's been invaluable for us to always include that in our conversations because it's forgotten about, and it's a fundamental right to have your language respected in this country. So I don't know if you wanted to comment about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got a message from Sarah that we're going to have to wrap up pretty quickly, but there might be two things that I wanted to jump back on is to rebound on is absolutely the specificity of New Brunswick because of the two languages and the way they interact, and the importance of being able to talk to different communities that don't have the same perspective on the issue, also because of that. And also the feedback that you've had from constituents on these issues and things like that. And the perfect example I have in mind is just last night, actually, a nurse wrote to us and sent us some information about glyphosate and wasn't sure she didn't have any specific information. And so I looked a bit into it and found some peer-reviewed documents on it, and that was able to inform us more on that issue, on something that we missed. And I was able to send her some specific information that she was looking for. And that feedback educational piece that we do as well on social media about those issues, I think is something that I find truly interesting in the way you go about being an MP locally and being able to bring that voice in Ottawa. So I find that really fascinating, and for someone that's interested in getting involved in politics, it's been a great learning experience. So I want to thank you for that as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Clément. And again, your help has been invaluable. And I can't imagine not having you with us. So I'm just so thankful to GreenPAC, for consistently providing such high quality interns, and even Clément, in your own right, was a former candidate. You're huge in the environmental movement. So I feel so lucky to have you working on my team. So with the interest of time, we could talk for hours, I'm sure, but just so thankful. And yeah, focusing on local issues has absolutely been our top priority. And it's just been great to have all your support.
Thank you. And thank you for GreenPAC, obviously, as well, for all the help. And Sarah, I can let you take it on from here.
Great. Well, thank you to you both. It's a drag to have to cut these really valuable conversations so short, but we are close on time here. So I'd like to invite MP Duncan to join us again, and former intern Jessie Mays. Jessie was placed in MP Duncan's office before joining the team of MP Dan Mazier in January. Welcome.
Hello, Jessie. Good to see you.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, we had the opportunity for a few months of having the internship in your office, but you were very successful very quickly in terms of getting a full-time employment on the Hill with my colleague Dan. So I was happy to have you. I was sad to see you leave, but you certainly have a great opportunity there. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you too. So I have a few questions for you actually, and we'll just jump right in with that. When I was in your office, I noticed how you connected the concerns of your constituents to larger environmental issues. So I was just wondering if you could comment on the importance of looking at issues through an environmental lens.
Sure. And I think actually to start off, I just want to thank GreenPAC for the opportunity to work with Jessie and have her in our office and as part of our team. And I smile because whenever you take the idea of taking an intern on, you say, well, it's an opportunity for a young person to learn. Well, it was an opportunity for me to learn as well, and to be have the opportunity for Jessie to do a lot of research and to educate me as well on some issues, and particularly local ones, of trying to localize it as much as we can. I think of sustainable agriculture, and I was mentioning that earlier about organic farming, no-till farming, and then just the evolution of science and technology to do more data tracking and analytics when it comes to crops and planting and a wide variety of things in agriculture and tracking yields. It was, there's a lot of opportunity there, and a lot of opportunity to get a message out and localize it to constituents, particularly in the ag community. The other thing, Jessie, I always talk about too is we use the words adaptation and building resilience, for an example, when it comes to climate change. But what does that actually mean, and localizing that and giving people a perspective? I think when we talk about climate change or environmental issues, a problem that we have with our constituents across the country, wherever we may be, what does that mean locally? So for us, for an example, the water levels in the St. Lawrence River, we have low water levels in our area. The Great Lakes are seeing unprecedented frequent flooding in many parts of the Great Lakes. and then into the city of Montreal and beyond. So for us, it's localizing it as well and giving people, what does this mean locally? How is it impacting us locally on environmental issues? So for me, it's really been trying to take these larger issues and build awareness locally. And we've seen some good support from that, from our federations of agriculture and different stakeholder groups that are involved with the water level and the IJC International Joint Commission on the river issue.
Thank you. And that kind of leads into my next question about some of the research that I did on water levels when I was in your office. I was really pleased to see that some of the solutions we had discussed, like a national action plan for flooding and high-risk flood insurance, that those were included in the new conservative environmental plan. And so I was just wondering if you could talk about how you work to get those in the plan, and then more broadly about how you approach issues like these that require a longer time frame before you see a solution.
Sure. Well, I think one of the great opportunities of, particularly the GreenPAC program and the internship, and for myself as a new parliamentarian as well, is to understand the many tools in the kit that are available for MPs to move issues forward and priority issues. So you mentioned as well, we were doing a lot of work and research on flooding and getting those into our climate change platform. That was some work that we did outside the regular House of Commons chamber, and the work that people maybe see visually or that we enjoy doing the most sometime. But there's a lot of different opportunities and avenues for members and their teams to advance issues. You mentioned on platform development, there's shadow cabinet, there is question period, but there's so much more beyond that. I know Jenica, for an example, is very good at doing late show requests, the adjournment proceedings of having a 10-minute exchange on an issue back and forth with a minister or parliamentary secretary to get the issue on the House floor and elaborated on more. Committee studies, people underestimate the strength of committees as well, and the opportunity to get those on the radar, to get certain studies done, get witnesses in, get recommendations for the government to implement. And it goes on, interparliamentary groups, petitions, and then just building lists, and the opportunity we have as members outside of, again, Parliament Hill is our social media. It's not connected to the environment, but a good example personally for myself. An issue is ending the blood ban for men who have sex with men has been a personal priority for myself. I did a video on social media talking about the first time I donated blood, and I had to turn it down or turn it away or put a no sticker on there because of the ban. I didn't know it existed when I did it before. That video got 400,000 views between Facebook and Twitter. So we have an opportunity in our offices, not just there's parliamentary, not just in the chamber, but then also on social media and using our voices to get that out. So again, to that point, is making sure we use the full toolkit available to us to get our message out.
That's great. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, we have to wrap that up there. But I also just want to take this opportunity to thank you again for the time that I was able to spend in your office. I did learn a lot. So thank you.
Well, back at you. I learned a lot as well. It was a wonderful experience.
Great. Thank you, MP Duncan, and thank you, Jesse. And thanks to all of our guest speakers today one more time. This was our first public event that featured not just our interns, our MP partners and endorsees, but our parliamentary interns. And if you're a young person who is excited about what you heard, I hope you'll consider applying for the parliamentary internship program. Also, if you enjoyed these insights about the realities of environmental leadership in politics, I'd welcome you to join us tomorrow for our Flip Summit, or actually that's Saturday. The days are blending together. But on Saturday, we're holding a summit. It's a full day of programming for youth and anyone else really interested in exploring more about environmental leadership in politics. We have a really amazing lineup of experts and politicians and guests, including the Minister of Heritage, Stephen Guilbeault, and MPs Dan Albas and Elizabeth May. MP Backrack will also be back, and former Ontario Premier Dalton McGuinty will also be joining us. I'm also thrilled to announce that Dr. Ingrid Waldron will join us over lunch to talk about her work on environmental racism. So please check it out. Thanks once more to our presenting sponsors, Bruce Power, Coca-Cola Canada, Power Corporation of Canada, and EDF Renewables. Thanks, Dave, for joining us today. And to our audience members for some really excellent questions. I wish we could have got to every one of them. The recording of today's conversation will be available on GreenPAC's GreenPAC's Facebook and webpage, and I hope you'll stay engaged with us. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, learn more, and get involved. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.